Good evening. I'm Socrates, Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. WeBelieveDigital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Good evening and welcome to Doc and Sock. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the Deep South. Now, if you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to share this program with your friends and family. Send us stars. We need your support. If you're watching us on YouTube, go on and subscribe to the program. Our subscription base is growing every day. I always send a shout out to Roland Martin because I look at his numbers and we are so proud of what you have done. You have set the standard. You've shown us the way. Now we're on the right track. If you're watching us on WeBelieveDigital.com, our very own network, our very own platform, you'll see that we are a platform and not a page. On WeBelieveDigital.com, you can scroll down and you'll find We Believe Radio, WBLV Radio. We have our very own internet radio station playing some of the best music you ever wanted to hear. We have some of the best musical directors in Randy Wildman Brown, who comes on twice a week, and HT3 Herman Taylor that comes on twice a week, and Boogie down in Florida that comes on 3 times a week on WBLV Radio. Take a look at it. How do you get there? Go to WeBelieveDigital.com. Go to the website, scroll down where you see Listen Live to the Radio. Just click the button and you'll be on. Go to WeBelieveDigital.com. Scroll down to Listen to the Radio and click the button and you'll be there. It's just that simple. Now, Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, we stay in the news. We just can't seem to get out of the national headlights. Here we are again in the middle of a water crisis in Jackson, Mississippi. As we speak today, there are hundreds, thousands of people in South Jackson that have no water, little or no water pressure, and some with no water at all. Just a week ago, we had a boil water notice that the water was not safe to drink. And it was contested by the new czar, Ted Hennepin, that the government sent down here to fix Jackson's problems. And today we find ourselves with a freeze in Mississippi, and we're not accustomed to freezes, but in South Jackson, people are unable to bathe. They are unable to wash their dishes. They're unable to take care of their children because, once again, we're in a water crisis. Now, when we have no water pressure, then everything associated with the utilization of water is in jeopardy. All of the HVA systems, all of the cooling towers, all air conditioner units now are going to fail because if you don't have enough pressure to run the chiller, then your system goes down. That means you're without air, you're without heat. And so you have all of these things that are going on right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, I realize we're a poor state. We're the poorest state in the nation, and we have the highest number of African Americans of any other state in the nation. And so I guess When you have high concentrations of African Americans, you're going to get high concentrations of poverty. Now, some say that's by design. But I'm finding it difficult to see who is doing the designing, because in Jackson, Mississippi, we have African Americans that are in control of over $1 billion in economic opportunities annually. The city of Jackson, with some $350 million in its budget. Jackson Public Schools with over $300 million in its budget. Hinds County Board of Supervisors, controlled by all African Americans, over $300 million in its budget. The Airport Authority, controlled by African Americans, over $300 million in its budget. And yet, we are the poorest sector in the entire state. African Americans in Jackson, Mississippi have the highest degree of education of any place else in the state, and we have the highest number of people living in poverty. It's something rotten in Denmark. It's something going on. Our people that we send down there to make a difference, improve the quality of life for us, are consistently failing us at every turn. And I think it's because they have lost their commitment to the race itself. We're in a period of time when ethnicity means absolutely nothing to the generation that came after Dr. Henderson and I. It means absolutely nothing. They see no problem, they see no issues, and they continue to carry out the agenda of those that oppressed us for years and years and years. Quite frankly, many African Americans are doing better under white leadership than they are under black leadership. And that is a shame and a disgrace when you think about Dr. Martin Luther King having given his life so that sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee could have a better quality of life. So we got some real problems. Now, as always, my co-host is here with me, Dr. Eldridge Henderson, a man who needs no introduction, a man that was born on a plantation in the Mississippi Delta, and today is Dr. Eldridge Henderson. He knows a little something about something. He knows a thing or two. And so it's always good to have him on the show as we go through the issues that are facing us today as a group, as a race, as a country. Dr. Henderson, how have you been, sir?
I've been fine, sir. Been fine.
It's good to see you. I had a chance to catch your show early on today with a good friend of mine, Vince Gordon. I thought that was a great show.
Thank you. Thank you.
You were talking about solutions, and you're talking about how you cut the cabbage and how you remedy a spoiled cabbage.
Yes, sir.
I think he was saying you got to cut it out.
You have to cut it down till you find what we call the good part and salvage that. You can't throw the whole thing away because the rotten apple has a few good chews on it if you have time to find it. And that'll keep you going until you can find a good apple.
Well, Doc, we're going to talk about some rotten apples. I'd like to get your opinion on Ben Carson's recently stated that slavery wasn't all that bad. What do you think about Dr. Carson?
Well, I think Dr. Carson is a smart man. Dr. Carson is a retired medical specialist. He is a retired politician. And he is believing, like a lot of people, that his man will probably become president again. And Carson is probably tired of being retired. He's probably going to seek another position. It might be an ambassador or something like that. So he has to take the Republican line and say slavery wasn't bad. There's no discrimination in America. That people are in the position they're in because they lack the will to do something. And that they have equal opportunity all over America. He is saying that. Nikki Haley is saying the same thing. And she, too, is a member of immigrants. And Carson is a member of former slaves. His people were not free. He didn't come from a free stock of black folks. So people like that are just trying to take the talking points of the people they support so they can get ahead politically.
Wow. Now, you mentioned Nikki Haley. I understand that she didn't think that the Civil War had anything to do with slavery.
Well, of course, she's supposed to say that. You know she knows better. But that's what her boss say. That's what the permanent Republicans are saying. So you have to take that nationalist position and say whatever you are told to say, because I've told you before, these groups get together, these political committees and top leaders, they put together anywhere from 10 to 100 talking points on economics, politics, war, and other things, pass it out to their members, and they all say the same thing.
Now, Doc, I don't know if there is an agenda. You keep referring to the Republicans. Are you associating the Republicans and Nikki Haley's statements about slavery and Ben Carson's statement that slavery wasn't that bad? And are you saying that that is a part of the Republican platform?
Of course it is.
Wow.
And some of the Mississippi politicians will say the same thing. There's nothing wrong with slavery if you were not one, in their mind.
Now, Doc, these are black people we're talking about. I know Nikki Haley's not black, but she is a female, which puts her in a class that's different than, she can't be called a white supremacist. Now,
No, she can't even be called white. But now she passes for white.
what is she if she's not white?
Well, she is what you called an Indian American. Her folks are from Asia. You know, she is sort of like our vice president.
No, I don't know how is our vice president.
She is considered by some an outside black person that's not alleging to be black or act black.
What do you mean by outside black person?
Well,
how do you become an outside?
She was born through immigrant parents that had different histories than the black people have that were born in America.
So are you saying that she doesn't understand the tragedy and the horror of slavery and the things that black people went through?
Exactly. That's a great interpretation. The vice president doesn't understand it, nor Nikki Haley. They have not had to experience it. Now, according to our information, Nikki Haley and her folks were discriminated against when they came here to America, and they were close to the black community, and that's the way they were able to survive, by selling their goods and services to black folks, because the white folks didn't buy their goods and services. And they rose on the back of blacks, and of course they sent her to get a good education, and of course now she is accepted as a legitimate white American female.
Wow. Now, Doc, are you saying that the Republican Party has been invaded? Because we had a young man there that was getting about 8% of the vote. He is a Indian, of Indian descent, I believe. I can't call his name. I can't pronounce his name. But are you saying that we have a native Indian and Nikki Haley that is not of European descent that have invaded the Republican Party and have now moved up to the highest positions?
That's exactly right. And what's surprising, and will be surprising to some, there are going to be some other non-expected individuals that's going to declare that they are Republicans. You're going to find more black people in America declaring that they are Republicans. We both know a lot of them here in Jackson, but of course they call themselves independents and other things, or nonpartisan.
Well, I'm not sure that the Republican Party is the source of our problem. I think that the source of our problem as African Americans lies at the hands of African Americans, people like Clarence Thompson, who carries out policies that do not sit well in the African American community. Roe versus Wade. They talk about those kind of things that he supports from a conservative position as a black man that hurts other black people.
See, I told you before, these people want to be accepted. If Clarence Thomas would take a position that's going to upgrade and promote the interests of black people, in the first place, he wouldn't even be on the Supreme Court. And if he was able to get on the Supreme Court with all that Republican and Democrat support he had from those senators, he has to follow the line. He has been accused of all kinds of issues, economically and so forth. But he has not violated any laws. He enjoys his prestige. He has a job for life, and he wants to be there, even though he knows most things he says about black people, not but a bunch of lies. But he cannot say that publicly, and he most certainly not going to rule against the status quo. Because when you are interviewed for these jobs as federal judges, you are told what the line is that you can't cross.
Now, Doc, I believe that's an interracial couple. So Clarence is not prejudiced. He's got a interracial relationship. He's married to a European. And so what do you think about that?
Well, I can't go against that publicly. I would have to say that one should marry the person that they can marry if they can get themselves in a position that is going to be an advantage. And that was one of the reasons he probably married her. And rich people and people that are trying to make it in the world usually do that. You don't find any rich people marrying poor folks in a general manner. You're not going to find a billionaire marrying a millionaire. He's going to find, or she's going to find, a billionaire's son or daughter to marry.
Are you saying that two broke people ought to not go into business together or not ought to get married? Are you saying that? Is that tantamount to saying that two ugly people ought not get married?
No. Two ugly people ought to get married if they can, but two broke people shouldn't, if they can help it.
Doc, we're talking about rotten apples. There's a lot going on in the world today about our preachers, our ministers, and it's specifically T.D. Jakes. Every time I turn the TV on, I see some dialogue about Dr. Jakes, and then I see a dialogue about Eddie Long. What is happening to black leaders in this country today? Why are they falling so fast and so far?
Well, basically two things. One is jealousy, and the other one is social media. You can't get away doing things in the silent moment where you're away from the public anymore. If you're with the big boys that have clout, that have these mansions, there are going to be some insurgent in that group that's going to pull that phone out and take a picture or something or record something so he can get him a little clout later on. Usually what they try to do when they get something on these people, they let them know I got something on you, and they try to bribe them. And if they go and say, I'm not going to give you what you want, they expose them.
Are you trying to say that it was not appropriate for Dr. Jakes reportedly, supposedly, to be at a party with Puff Daddy? Are you saying that ministers can't go to strip clubs? Or are you saying that they are not allowed to attend festivities where people are drinking and enjoying cocktails and maybe even drugs? Are you saying that ministers are not allowed there?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying ministers ought to be able to go anywhere they want to go as long as they're promoting their special religious interests. And that is to look out for the people that are suffering. If a preacher goes to a club, he should be there to see if he could convert some of the models, some of the drug users, some of the alcoholics. Now, he shouldn't take part in those activities. If he's at a strip club, he shouldn't be throwing his money in there.
He can't get a lap dance?
I wouldn't advise that. No, I wouldn't. That's going beyond his expectation in public. That's why I say those people that are there going to catch that kind of thing. But Jesus did the same thing. He went to places he didn't supposed to go, nor did people expect him to be there. But
Well-
he didn't indulge in those activities.
Well,
that
I
particular-
understand that one of the very first miracles that Jesus performed was to convert water into wine.
That's right.
I assume that he had some of that wine that he produced.
Well, it appears, and I've read that story too, I don't think he had any. It appears that the wine gave out, and his mother told him directly to make some wine. And with that internal power that he had, and everlasting power, and being the Son of God, he can just speak it, and it happened.
That's a powerful man.
But we don't have anybody like that alive these days. These preachers, T.D. Jakes, Long, and some of them others that we have had on our show, don't have that kind of power. They are just regular men that's subject to make a mistake from time to time. And if they are smart, they'll try to do their dirty work in private and stay away from the public affairs.
Well, you can't hardly get to a private spot now, Doc. Social media and AI and things like that will go back and pull up things you said 20 years ago, a girl that you supposedly got pregnant some 30 years ago. Now everybody's life is an open book.
And that's why people have to be careful. They have to cut this kind of activity out.
Well, that's kind of hard to do. The number one drive that God put in man was to reappropriate. That is to make sure that you increase your race.
Well, that's true, but they need to be like your good friend Geno Jennings. He says it's nothing wrong with procreation if you are married to someone and you have a right to do that, but you're not to be an outside father.
I think that's New Testament philosophy. I believe that Solomon, which was the wisest man, one of God's chosen people, had multiple wives.
Of course. That was part of the culture during that time. But those times have passed.
Well, what made them pass?
Cultural expectation, economics, politics.
Now, do you know that children in India don't have to have a last name
No, I didn't know that.
because they're not going anywhere? And so if you're not traveling all around the country, and I don't mean to be laughing,
I
but I'm just
understand.
thinking, if you're not leaving the spot that you were born, why you need a last name? To just know you as John.
Well, now that's probably because of economics and racial discrimination. You know, they have something in India called a caste system. And if you're born in the wrong caste, one of those lower castes, you'll probably be born and die within a 10 or 15 mile radius of your hometown.
Right. You know that babies used to take the name, the last name of the mother.
Mhm.
You know that
That's
was
right.
that was common practice. That all changed, and now babies take the last name of the father.
That's political.
What do you mean political?
Well, politics determines those kind of things. Politics and economic development. And the rulers you have during those periods change things are going to fit their purpose economically and politically.
And so that gave birth to things like child support
Of course.
and fines and incarcerations
And racism. That's right. Relocation camps. Hangings. Murders that you can indulge in and get away with it if you're the person in charge or know someone that can protect you if you do those kind of things.
Now I understand if I wanted to do my DNA, that I can only come back through the mail to establish my lineage. But now I'm beginning to learn that the only way that you can really get all the way back to the garden is through the female.
That's right.
And so, things are changing now with 23andMe, all of the things out here that tell you what your lineage is. I discovered that I had some Jewish ancestors up in Leake County, right up in Carthage, Mississippi. And so I looked at them, and they had these facial features. They pronounced nose for one. and the curly hair and the things of that nature for another. And I found that there are all kinds of lineage inside of the American Negro today.
Let me tell you something, man. You couldn't find 1% of black people in America that will not have any white lineage. I told you many times, there are very few African that pass for black these days that were not born in America. One study says 99% of the black people in America today, 99% were born in America through the last 3 generations. And we have been talking for years on this show that in 1808 they stopped slavery from being sold from Africa. And I've told you many times, and I used to teach this years ago, so when you couldn't buy your slaves from Africa, you had to get them from the Caribbean. And since they were doing similar things, had big plantations there, the slaves were not being sold from the Caribbean area unless they were totally rebellious. So the slave owners in America then had to raise their own slaves, and that's why people like you and me and that other 99% of black people are not black anymore. We have been so-called merged and saturated with the genes of the Europeans.
Well, let me ask you that question, because we have been merged and saturated with that gene, but we also have the Native American gene that runs through here. We have all these other ethnic groups. But this theory that came back that said one drop of African American blood, you could be 99.9% something else. But if you had one drop of African American blood, you were put in that caste system that you spoke about, and that's where you had to remain.
Well, that's correct. As long as you didn't leave your community, you had to be a black person. But a lot of blacks decided, well, I don't want to be black anymore, so they left their communities and moved elsewhere. You have relatives that have done it. I have relatives that did it, and they are white folks now. And when you see their children, you see no signs of blackness.
Wow.
No sign.
Well, let me ask you this. If a European and a Native American produce a child, what is that child?
Well, he's going to be, they don't call them mulattoes when the Caucasian and an Indian have children together. I forget what they call them. But they are a biracial child.
Is the child white?
Well, it all depends on his appearance. And it depends on how he's raised. Now, if he's raised with his father and his mother together, usually he's going to take his dad's language and culture.
Is society going to accept him as being European or not?
Well, it all depends on his appearance. Now, if he has those Indian features, he is going to be like old Tonto or whatever, which was a white Caucasian. But he's going to...
The one with the long range?
That's right.
Okay.
So
Kemosabe.
That's right. He's going to be considered an Indian if he has the American Indian features. But a lot of those Indians are called and were called civilized Indians. Those were the ones that had white mothers and fathers, their sons and daughters. They were told that they are a little better off because they look white than the other Indians that had a brown or a black hue.
Well, let me ask you this. If an African and a Hispanic produce a child, what is the child?
Well, it all depends, again, on his color. If he is dark, he's considered black. If he is leaning towards what I call light brown, he's going to be considered a Hispanic person. And usually, if he can speak Spanish or she can speak Spanish, they're going to be considered a Hispanic.
Doc, this is all so confusing.
That's why they treat it that way. So they got it fixed now where you have about 16 different ethnic groups versus black and white 200 years ago.
So is there, do our viewers understand the luck of the draw? That being the offspring of a European and a Native American, and the child then becomes, if he happens to be light, he's able to become a European, but if he happens to be dark, he has to become a Native American.
That's right.
And that the life expectancy and the quality of life for those two children
Going to be different.
are different.
That's right, exactly.
Why is that?
Because of cultural expectations. But give you an example. If you have a child, a brother and a sister, one can leave out of the house, and I'm just going to use Jackson for example. They live in Utica, Mississippi. Same brothers and sisters. One is high yellow, and the other is a black person. And they could go to the doctor. 30 years ago, the black person couldn't even get in the doctor's office, but the white child could if he wasn't with a black person as a relative.
That happened in your lifetime.
Of course. You didn't have equal treatment. So therefore, that white kid could go in there and get his shots, get some minor surgery. But a person like me, during those periods, would have to go down in the basement and let a doctor that you never seen or heard about take care of you once he takes care of all the white patients. And then, if you had a black doctor, he or she couldn't even come to the hospital to serve you. And I'm talking about during my time.
Now, Doc, it appears then that none of this stuff that we've been fighting about and fussing about has been about race. It appears then, based upon this conversation, this dialogue that we're having, it's all about color.
Of course. That's what it's about.
It's about color.
About color. If you're the right color, you can do anything you want to do because you're going to get more grace from the people that's supposed to punish you. If you're black, you can't hardly do anything right because if you get equity, you're then going to be put in a situation where you're going to be competing with the people that gave you equity. And that's the last thing they want to do.
We're up against a commercial break. We're going to go to this break and come back and continue this conversation. We certainly want to talk about this immigration issue that is just taking this country by storm down on our border, on the Texas border down there, and something is going on. I understand now that the displacement of blacks in urban cities like Chicago is the number one concern of leading African Americans. So we're going to this break. You stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Socrates Garrett ENT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. Socrates Garrett ENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into M.Dot grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
Welcome back to Doc and Sock. We're having a lively discussion about some issues that are really important, discussions that are going on around everybody's dinner table throughout this country and throughout the world. People are trying to decide what side are you on. People are trying to decide who are you really. You know, as a boy in the country, even with black folks would show up, my daddy would always ask them, who are your folk? I need to know who you are, where you came from, so I can have some understanding what you might do and what you might not do based upon that lineage. And so we're having a discussion about lineage. We're not having a discussion about the critical race theory. We haven't gotten into that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the issues that divide this country. And what we have come across is that the issue is not and has not been about race. It has not and is not about race. But it is a great divide. There is something there that causes one group to suffer and another group to prosper. And we talked about those things in the remarks of Nikki Haley and the remarks of Ben Carson and how they totally minimized the devastation of slavery in those events. And so we talked about that. But what we have found, though, that there is an issue of color. Color. That's how we are divided. And we're going to continue to talk about that. So in that vein, if you're watching us on Facebook, go on and share this program with your friends and families. Send us subscriptions. Join our fan club. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to the program. We need your help. This show is tremendously important. And we need to stay on the air. I know we're African-American owned studio, broadcasting live in the poorest state in the country, but yet, too, we can be successful. We can do something good arising out of Mississippi, out of the devastation and the poverty and the horrible history that we have come through to this point. And I'm afraid that the history in the future looks bleak, doesn't look as well as it did for me as a young African-American on a 100-acre farm with my daddy on the land. Doesn't look that well for my sister's children and my children. They don't seem to have the same opportunities in front of them that we had. We had the benefit of affirmative action, and we had the benefit of some tremendous leaders and fighters that were fighting for our rights and equality. And just the list goes on the top of my mind. I want to salute Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael and Ralph Brown and Angela Davis. These people just gave their lives. And I want to salute Medgar Evers and my boy down in Hattiesburg, Vernon Damer. I want to salute these men that gave their lives in order for me to be able to sit where I'm sitting today. And it is my responsibility and my commitment to them that I would not be silent, that I would speak the truth that they spoke during my time and my position to reign as a senior citizen. And so that's what we're doing here on this program each and every week, and we need your support. Now, if you're watching us on WeBelieveDigital.com, our very own platform, scroll down, you'll see Listen Live on our radio, WBLV Radio. Check out Herman Taylor, HT3, on Wednesday nights and Friday nights. Check out Randy Wildman Brown as he comes during the week. Check out Boogie down in Florida. These are people that are committed to making We Believe Radio and We Believe podcast station something very special. Boogie says that one day we will be just like CNN. Everybody had to begin somewhere. And I told him that we may become CNN, but it'll be the Colored News Network. And that's what the CNN would stand for. So support us. Stay with us as we continue this dialogue with our knowledgeable, dangerous co-host, Dr. Eldridge Henderson, born on a Mississippi plantation. Get that. Born on a plantation, have lived through everything that we're talking about. Didn't read it, lived through it. And so he's given back to this community. And he is to be respected and appreciated for the contribution that he continues to make each and every week to this podcast studio and to America. Dr. Henderson, let's get right back into it.
Okay.
I'm told that blacks in Chicago in particular, are tremendously concerned about the number of immigrants that have moved in their communities, and blacks feel like they're being displaced.
Well, they should be concerned about it because that's exactly what's happening. And this is a national effort because you will find that the people in Texas and Florida have enough of those kind of people that they don't like, called Hispanics. So they are going to send those folks on those wonderful buses and planes to Chicago, New York, and other places, and put them close to the black community. Because I've been telling you, since I know a little about history, they have plans for the black people. They're going to take the black schools and put Hispanics in there, those vacant schools. They're going to take those apartments and old hotels that's in those same communities that's just not being used. They're going to rehab those and put those foreigners in there. I said earlier they're going to create job programs where they can get jobs and driver's license and other aid within 30 to 90 days of being here in America. And then they're going to go to the hotels, the hospitals, and get the jobs that black people have. I've seen that happen in the 90s. In the 1960s and 70s, when I was in the military, and after then, when I moved to Atlanta, everywhere you go in restaurants, look in the back part, black folks in there cooking. You go to the hotels, black people were doing the work, cleaning the rooms. Now you have Hispanics and other Asians doing that. What happened to all those black people who used to cook and clean at these hotels and work in these restaurants? What happened to them? They're not dead.
Hold up a minute, Doc. I think we have a caller on the line. Caller, you're on the line.
Hello, how you two gentlemen doing tonight?
We're doing good. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. I want to ask a question to both the both of you. You guys are two seasoned gentlemen that been through a lot, seen a lot of carnage and been through a lot in this state, and overcame the inevitable. For the youth today and the new generation today, how can we engage the want to, the strive, and the ability to just really want to do something and strive better instead of relying on the government to take care of us? I'm just asking this question, and I'm going to get off the phone and let you guys have it.
Caller, being self-reliant is the most important thing that we could strive to accomplish. You know, we came from being that. That is not some foreign position for African Americans. We were self-reliant. We did not even go to the store but once a month. We grew everything that we needed to eat. We had our own, created our own brooms. We created our own molasses. We created our own meal. We created everything that we need. We had blacksmiths, we had cows, we had horses. We were self-reliant, and we were the victims of things being taken from us because Europeans would come into our communities and just take your stuff, because if they want it, they could just take it and you couldn't do anything about it. And so, but self-reliant is tremendously important. But Doc, somewhere we lost being self-reliant. When did that occur?
That happened around 1965 through the 1980s. And people don't like for me to say this, but that was called integration. We lost all those things that you just mentioned, those things that you had. You had a grits meal. Black Joe down the hall or down the road might have had a lumber meal. Someone made the molasses. That was a black man. On and on and on. If your car messed up, You can take it down to a man that couldn't even spell car, and he could fix it. He was a mechanic. You could have a chimney made, someone never been trained, can put your chimney there, can build you a house. But after integration, the government and others start passing laws that says you have to be certified, insurance, sometimes bonded, to even be able to do that. Even today, you can't go around and do certain things that I mentioned without insurance, certification, and authorization from the city or the county.
Now, Doc, we were self-reliant. We could take care of ourselves, and you're saying that integration began the skid for black people to become dependent upon somebody else?
That's exactly right. And the smart people that promoted this kind of thing knew it was going to happen, but they were so brainwashed to believe that you were going to go and integrate someone else's church, schools, businesses, and those very people didn't even respect you as a human being. And most of the people that were fighting for this kind of integration during this period couldn't even vote themselves, whether they lived in the north, east, south, or west. I'm talking about those big black leaders. There were a few enclaves in the northeast, like Chicago and some parts of New York, where a few blacks could vote in certain parts of those cities, but not all over the state. And very few black people in the 1960s and early 1970s voted in the South anywhere. There were a few mulatto families that had businesses and stuff that could ease around and vote, but they were considered the elite in the black community. Their mom or their dad or their brother usually was a white person, and they were had brothers and sisters, so they could ease around and vote. But they were not considered real Americans. They were not considered citizens. For instance, I told you before, when my grandfather died, his old daddy was a white Caucasian in Hinds County. He could go to the funeral, but one of his so-called white friends allowed him to go to the white funeral home at night and look at his father. Now, this man died in 1954. My grandfather's father. 1954. He was old guy.
Now, we got a lot of stuff we got to work through. I mean, we are rebuilding a man.
That's right.
We have to rebuild a man, and the generation behind us is suffering from something that causes them to hate one another. And that's why we have all these killings going on, blacks killing blacks at an alarming rate. We don't care for one another anymore, so we are dependent. But, Doc, I want to get back to these immigrants in Chicago. Now, when these immigrants are displacing blacks from their communities at an alarming rate, I'm told that Watts, California, now is 65% Hispanic. I remember when Watts was 100% back in the day of, what was that guy's name that got the beat down that said, can we all get along?
Yeah,
Rodney King.
That's right.
When Rodney King got his beat down, Watts was 100% black.
And Harlem used to be the same way, basically.
Harlem was
Almost 100% black, Harlem, New York. It has changed now. The only few blacks you find in Harlem are usually people that are working for someone else.
Wow.
They lost their nice houses and apartments. They went through regentrification, and now those same buildings that blacks used to own cost $4 and $5 million, and when they had them, they bought them for $60,000 and $70,000. And most of those blacks then had jobs where they could buy those kind of places. Now, with them costing $4 and $5 and $6 million, you can't buy a place in Harlem.
You can't buy a place in Harlem. You can't now buy a place in Chicago because blacks now are being moved out. But let's bring it down to Jackson, Mississippi. I was on Mill Street in Jackson, Mississippi down where between used to be Farris Street and Mill Street in that area. There are no black people down there anymore, Doc.
Of course not.
Where did they go?
Well, that's what I try to tell y'all. Where did they go? They went further into ghetto, in prison, and dead. They have been homeless. They have been sick. They have moved with their relatives in rural areas, and many of them, especially the young ones, in prison.
And they're mentally ill and
That's
on
right.
drugs.
That's right, exactly. And those guys, 50s, 60s, and 70s.
So, Doc, when I came into Fondren in Jackson and I see all of these beautiful buildings and hotels and new garages going up and restaurants, I see no black people.
You're not going to see any. But guess who fund those big money-making entities that mentioned? Just a few days ago, the the Hines County supervisors gave a group $5 million to build a garage, and I guarantee you, if you would ask for $500,000 to build something in West Jackson or South Jackson, you would have a hard time getting it.
Let me correct you, Doc. They gave them $17 million.
17 million.
17 million to build a garage and 17 million to build a jail. Hines County funds white folks' garages and black folks' jails.
Well, I can agree with that.
That's what I see.
Hmm. You can only go by what you see and know, not what you've heard.
Now, Doc, black people are being displaced and they are going somewhere. I understood what you said, that they are going to all of these mental institutions and prisons and things of that nature. But are we, in fact, creating a new reservation for black people?
It's already designed. I have been talking about this for at least 15 years. Just 3 weeks ago, I was showing you the information. They have these places already designed for black folks. Now, that's who's going to be there. Now, they're going to have white guards and Hispanic guards and so forth. But that's where we're going to be basically, the black people that's under 65. You see, that's where they're going to be, on these, I call them relocation camps, because we're going to be gone out of Jackson. Jackson blacks not going to be able to live around Farris Street and on Capitol Street after about 15 years. They're not going to be able to afford it. How many blacks you know can live right now in the King Edward Hotel?
None.
Very few, unless they have a good job. Very few. You're not going to find many.
Not going to find many. Now, Doc, I get that. And so this has happened before.
Of course.
I've often talked about the fact that Mississippi can just declare that we don't need no more black people.
Well, they already declared it.
And march them off to a reservation.
Well, they're going to wait and do that a little later on. Look at the legislature. Blacks have no impact in the legislature, in the House, nor the Senate. Those Republicans do whatever they want to do. And the blacks have to sit there and smile and act like they like it.
What about the white Democrats? Don't they offset the white Republicans?
Of course they do. But they are white. Blacks going to put them white Democrats in office regardless.
Do white Democrats support the causes that matter to black people?
No, they usually don't. Now, they might do it verbally, but when it comes to the vote, they work together, in most cases, with the Republicans. Look who and where they live. Look at who and where they go to church. Look at who they are playing golf with. Look at the boards that they are on. I'm talking about these white Democrats. But they can run until they get too old to run for politics. They can be in a community. They won initially when they had a white majority. And the last 15 to 20 years in those white districts where the Democrats are, you get more and more blacks, and they still win.
Wow. So it's just some charades. There is no such thing as Republicans and Democrats. There are the have
and have-nots
and have-nots.
And black and whites.
And black and whites.
The whites have the power. The blacks that have don't have any.
Right. So
the so-called middle-class blacks in Mississippi don't have any real power because they can't make decisions on where to spend that big money. When they have even contract distribution, they don't have a choice but to give it to the people with the best proposal.
Doc, the system is hard to get around.
Very much so.
Let me move to this point, because you're talking about these groups. Now, we have more blacks in the legislature than any other state. We have more blacks in the House and the Senate than any other state. We have more blacks in elected position in Hines County than any place in the world. But yet we're on a skid, we're on a slide downward.
Every year in this area that you're referencing is getting worse, politically and economically.
But we have all these blacks in position.
That's right. But they have no power. See, any time you can't determine where you're going to spend the money and who you're going to hire, you don't have any power. When you get in a position where you have a problem, the dominant group decide who your leaders are going to be. Look at what happened to the water situation. And sooner or later, they're trying to take the airport. As soon as they can get enough people on the board and maneuver, the airport going to change.
Wow.
They have a court case now where they is waiting to get a good Republican judge, and that's going to change. The city of Jackson is already dead. In 10 years, you're going to have a total sweep of new elected officials.
Doc, time is running out on us, so I want to get to this. You once said that blacks better learn to speak Spanish.
They better.
Now,
those 65 and younger.
Yes.
Folks like us don't have to worry about it.
Yes. Now, we're living longer, Doc, so we might have to learn a little bit.
Well, you can still get along with that little English you have until you leave here. But not them 65 years of age.
They better learn.
They better learn.
But, Doc, I want to make certain that it's Spanish that we need to learn, because the legislature, the governor, called a special session to get considerations to support a $1.9 billion expansion up in Marshall County.
Of course, he's going to get it. Of course.
But this company is owned by the Chinese. Now, last week, we were saying that America was concerned that the Chinese own too much land in America.
They're going to own more because their money is cheaper than the American money. They already own all kinds of land in Mississippi, all over the United States, all kinds of big commercial buildings and industries in this country. And they have thousands and thousands of Chinese Americans that's here working. And they are gradually taking over. The Russians doing the same thing, but the black people are not. We spend our money on entertainment. And our black people that have the big money not doing very much that's of significance in the black community. They are not spending that money in the black community. I'm talking about the athletes, the 2 or 3 big movie stars that making $3 and $4 million per film. They are not spending their monies in black communities, nor are they supporting black education. There might be 1 or 2 that might give $1 million here and there, but at the same time, they're going to give $10 million to a white institution to be accepted and to get that next big movie.
Doc, we gotta just call it the way it is. Athletes today spend their money back in the European community. They marry Europeans more than they marry Africans. Now, when you and I came along, there was no interracial marriages in Mississippi. I don't recall not a single one.
You most certainly couldn't find one. You found a lot of relationships, but you couldn't find no interracial marriage.
They were at night.
I hate to say it, but that's true.
There were no interracial marriages.
There were a lot of whites and blacks working together at night.
And I recall that somebody said, it might have been one of those great comedians that said that during my time, if you saw me with a white woman, I was holding her for the police.
That's right.
I certainly was not dating her.
No.
And so we were forced to support our own. We didn't have the integration. We were forced to support our own and build our own economy.
And was doing a good job.
And was doing a good job. Owned a lot of land, Doc.
Of course. You owned a lot of land. Every black so-called community that went in, they had all kind of little businesses, even though they were small businesses. There were a lot of families with little stores in the back of their house and a little shed on the side of the house where they made $50 and $60 a week. That would go along with that $2 and $3 a day that they made in those little jobs they had. They were able to send their kids to college. And you know, they didn't start the grant until the 1960s. A lot of blacks went to college and universities, training in Mississippi. Even some of the middle-class blacks were able to send their daughters and sons to out-of-state medical schools, law school, and the state of Mississippi paid for it.
Doc, we're up against the clock. We got to get out of here, but we're going to come back tomorrow and continue this conversation. We're going to deal with the impact of $1.9 billion expansion by the Chinese into Mississippi, and what impact does it have on this 45% population that happens to look like me?
I have the remedy for that. We're definitely going to talk about it tomorrow.
You've been watching Doc and Sock on We Believe Broadcast Network. We appreciate your support for this program. We're going to put up all of the ways that you can support us, whether it's PayPal, Cash App, whether it's Stripe, whatever means you want to do it. Our websites now are going to link to our stores on Shopify and link to all of our web pages, including the Mississippi Link newspaper, a wonderful publication, 30-some years old, including Socrates, Garrett Enterprises, some 40-year-old construction company that, by the way, has not got one call from Ted Hennepin about an opportunity to do any work during this water crisis that we're having. Before that, we always participated in it, but we understand what's going on. And so we're going to link all of our websites. We Believe Digital will be linked there. Doc, what's the name of your website?
It's called Action Leadership Institute.
Action Leadership Institute's going to be there, and we're going to give you an opportunity to make a difference. Now, we have to run. Doc, any parting shots you want to take?
No, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do your fast because we don't have enough time.
Well, it's been a great show. We've talked about some things that are critically important. This is not a fluff show. We are not here to entertain you. We're not here to run a comedy show. We're telling you what's really going on in Mississippi and the world, and we'll continue this show next week. Until then, stay safe and good night.